The manager mocks me for not being able to speak. Sorry, I completely forgot about you. I thought I had one too many tickets and threw yours away. I was the one who planned the whole company trip and arranged all the plane tickets. He threw away my ticket. As I held my head in confusion, the manager said to me, "Just quit already, old man." I had let the manager handle the tickets because he insisted on it, but it was a mistake. It was clear he intended to exclude me from the start. Although I was frustrated, I decided to leave as the manager wished. "All right, I'm leaving." I turned my back on the manager and the others. From now on, the rest of the staff would enjoy the trip without me, in more ways than one. With that in mind, I contacted someone. Soon after, the manager returned. His previous smug attitude was gone, replaced with a pale, trembling face. "My name is John Wilson, a 45-year-old office worker. Since my mother passed away due to illness when I was 5, I lived with my grandmother and father at my father's family home. My father was busy with work and rarely at home. But I never felt lonely because I had my grandmother. She ran a barbershop, and I spent all my time there. I did my homework and ate my snacks at the barbershop. Whenever my hair grew long, my grandmother would cut it. The customers at the barbershop were fond of me, and I received a lot of affection from many people. Every year, we took a trip together. One of the barbershop's customers owned a resort hotel and gave us discount tickets every year. Though I realized this as an adult, as a child, I eagerly anticipated this annual trip where our family could relax. Even my father would take time off work for this trip, making it a precious time for me. When it came time to choose my career path, I was very conflicted, but I decided to follow in my father's footsteps into the service industry. I also wanted to take over my grandmother's barbershop, but due to its aging structure, it was decided that it would end with her generation, which made my decision easier. When I expressed my desire to work as a hotel manager at the resort that provided us with cherished family time, my grandmother and father supported my decision to go to college. Plans might change, and there are still many people in America who value academic credentials. My father strongly insisted that it wouldn't hurt to go to college, but I had a specific vocational school I wanted to attend. When my grandmother and father heard my wishes, they supported me and covered my tuition and lodging expenses. I enrolled in a vocational school specializing in tourism and business. I thoroughly studied services like hotels and travel, as well as hospitality. During long breaks, I participated in internships, leading to fulfilling days, and I secured a job at the resort hotel I had hoped for. My grandmother and father were very happy about this. I started my new life with the determination to work hard from scratch as a hotel manager. In the first year, I learned the workflow of the hotel. From the second year onward, there were personnel transfers based on suitability. Of course, this included relocations, which made it difficult to see my grandmother and father, but they always supported me. Despite the many unfamiliar tasks, I was supported by my colleagues and superiors, allowing me to smoothly navigate my professional life. Observing customers, understanding whether they were enjoying themselves or facing difficulties from their expressions, and offering appropriate assistance if needed was a challenging task. At first, I was so overwhelmed with my work that I couldn't notice anything about the customers. But after a while, my perspective broadened. "Let me carry your luggage." Of course, I did the basics, but I also sometimes asked, "Would you like me to take a family photo?" My seniors and superiors taught me about customer service in detail, and I steadily climbed the ranks. I worked in both resort hotels and affiliated business hotels, from cities to rural areas, serving not just tourists, but also business clients. One day, I was called in by my supervisor, wondering what it was about. I learned that as my experience grew, I was told, if there's a location you'd like to challenge yourself in, you can request a transfer. And if there's something you want to study more, take initiative. So, I requested a transfer to a hotel and decided to return to my hometown after 25 years. Now, I had to pass on the experience and knowledge I had gained to juniors and subordinates. I realized I had reached that age. I transferred to the hotel in my hometown as I had hoped. If I worked hard for a few years, I would likely get a managerial position. I became even more motivated at work. On my first day of transfer, I greeted all the departments in the hotel, including the kitchen, linen room, and office. Lastly, I greeted the front desk staff where I was assigned. "Nice to meet you. My name is John Wilson, and I will be working here starting today. I look forward to working with you." As I bowed deeply, my colleagues applauded. However, the manager's reaction was different. The manager, Chris Smith, is 43 years old. Rumor has it that he kept refusing transfers but steadily got promoted. So despite being in the same age group as me, he had already become a manager. "Why would someone your age get transferred to this rural hotel? I don't even have to ask to know it's a demotion." He laughed and then made a sour face, saying, "I don't know what you did, but you'll work hard here, loser." I was taken aback, never expecting to hear such words from a younger person on our first meeting. Judging by my colleagues' frowns, it seemed the manager had a habit of looking down on people. Although I had requested to come to this hotel, I didn't bother to explain that. If the manager was the only one causing trouble, I could endure it. As long as I could get along with my colleagues, there wouldn't be any problems. However, within a few days of my transfer, my colleagues began to join in on the manager's harassment. Was I fortunate to have been surrounded by good people before, or was this the norm? Despite returning to my hometown and making my family happy, I felt oppressed every day. Greetings were completely ignored. The worst incident was not being informed about the arrival of a group of guests. "Manager, this is unacceptable. Why didn't you tell me about the group reservation? You may not like me, but don't do things that inconvenience our guests." I almost double booked another reservation. Luckily, a colleague took over the phone call when I was about to make the reservation. If I had taken the call alone, I would have booked it. However, the manager just snickered at my anger. "It's your fault for not sharing information with your colleagues, isn't it? Everyone else knew about the group reservation, right?" The front desk staff nodded in agreement with the manager. All I could do was clench my fists tightly. Maybe the manager worked hard to get his current position. But no matter how hard he worked, using his position to manipulate subordinates or give orders they couldn't refuse was wrong. This time, it was the manager who instructed that I not be informed. He was far from being a good manager. Since then, I've become more anxious. I repeatedly checked reservations and inventory to ensure no inconvenience to our guests. One day, there was a survey about the destination for our company trip. At our hotel, we close all facilities once a year for a company trip. The company trip was created with the president's hope of deepening employee relationships and relieving fatigue. The manager ordered me to compile the survey results, choose the destination, and plan the trip. Remember, the destination has to be somewhere we can fly to. Just hurry up and plan the trip and get the tickets. As a result, the destination was decided to be Hawaii, and I started planning the trip. While handling my usual tasks, I tried to plan during my free time, but planning a group trip alone was too much. So, I went to a travel agency to get recommendations and plan for the group. I made reservations where possible and noted the flight times since the company card was used to purchase the tickets. Sometimes I wondered why I had to use so much effort for everyone else. But I told myself everyone was trying hard to endure the manager's pressure, even though the company was covering the travel costs. There was a set budget, so creating a plan within that budget that would satisfy everyone was challenging. Having come this far, all I could do was hope everyone would enjoy it. I submitted the compiled travel plan to the manager. Here is the travel plan. All that's left is to finalize the flight and hotel payments, so if there are no issues, I'll proceed with the bookings. Please confirm. The manager glanced over the documents and then threw them back at me. Why do I have to follow your arbitrary decisions for everything? I couldn't believe my ears. It was the manager who told me to decide everything. But from the way he said it, maybe I should have made several plans. Honestly, I don't have the time, and everything is already booked. I have other work to do, so I really want to avoid reworking the plan. I've already booked the banana boat and kayak. Redoing the plan will take more time. Stop whining. Then what do you want me to check? I was stunned by the manager's outburst. My mind shifted to thoughts of leaving early to visit the travel agency, or maybe taking some time off to handle other tasks. and planning a new itinerary. However, the manager snatched the documents back from me. "This will do. Good job. I just need to call and finalize the payments, right?" The manager had the authority to finalize the payments. But even though I would handle the follow-up after the payments, the manager insisted on doing it himself. I wondered what had changed his mind, but maybe he felt he needed to be involved in the trip planning to some extent. I bowed my head and asked the manager to finalize the payments for the flights and hotel. Since he approved the plan, I had no complaints. The day of the company trip arrived. To check attendance, I sat on the bench at the meeting place with the roster. As the meeting time approached, employees gradually gathered. "Manager, everyone is here," I told the manager. He then started distributing the itinerary and checking QR codes for the flights. I was impressed by the switch from tickets to QR codes, but the manager ignored me. "Excuse me, manager. What about my materials and ticket?" "What? You never had one to begin with." The manager mocked me for being unable to speak. "Is it? That was your ticket, I see." The manager clapped his hands in fake realization and laughed mockingly. "Sorry, I completely forgot about you. I thought I had won too many tickets and threw yours away." The others around us laughed at me as well. I was stunned. I had planned the entire trip and arranged all the flight tickets. He threw away my ticket. As I tried to make sense of this, the manager spoke to me. "Just quit already, old man." I had let the manager handle the tickets, which was a mistake. He probably intended to exclude me from the start. Though I felt frustrated, I decided to leave as the manager wished. If I hadn't entrusted him, this wouldn't have happened. "All right, I'm leaving." I turned my back on the manager and the others. Now, the rest of the staff would enjoy the trip without me. In more ways than one. I contacted someone. Shortly after, the manager returned. "Hey, what's going on?" His previous attitude vanished, replaced by a pale, trembling face. It seemed the flights for everyone had been cancelled. Other employees followed behind the manager, running to catch up. "What a huge mistake you've made. Are you talking about yourself?" The voice of the chairman from behind made the manager shiver. "I'm surprised. A company trip without the vice president and future general manager is unthinkable." The manager turned towards the voice, his face going pale and starting to tremble. "I got a call from the travel agency. They asked if it was okay to cancel one ticket. I thought someone had taken a day off, but it seems that's not the case." "What?" The manager seemed shocked, either by the term vice president or future general manager, and couldn't close his mouth. "Chris, could you explain what's going on? Interestingly, John's ticket was the one that got cancelled." "Well, I think John might have forgotten to include his own ticket." The chairman furrowed his brow. There's no way someone like him, also the vice president, would make such a mistake. A person who makes such errors couldn't be a general manager. "What do you mean?" "John is the vice president, the future general manager." Not just the manager, but the surrounding employees were also murmuring. "Well, it's understandable you didn't know. Unlike the president, he doesn't often put himself in the spotlight." The chairman handed a hotel brochure to the manager and pointed to the section with my name on it. Seeing it with his own eyes, the manager collapsed in shock. I started dating Jennifer, the chairman's daughter, shortly after joining the company. While I was contemplating proposing, Jennifer revealed she was the chairman's daughter. 15 years after joining the company, at age 35, I married Jennifer. The chairman then offered me the vice president position, and I rotated through various hotels in the group as part of my training. When I requested a transfer to the local hotel, it was because the chairman instructed me to choose the hotel where I would become the next general manager. I had always decided that if I climbed the ranks, I would work at the local hotel. This was the hotel where the customers of my grandmother's barbershop, who adored me, used to work. I had been working with the desire to repay those customers. The customer in question was actually the chairman himself. While I worked as a regular employee on the surface, providing services to guests alongside other employees, I handled vice president duties behind the scenes, but mostly supported the president without taking on major tasks. By the way, the president is my wife, Jennifer. Because of this, most employees were unaware of my true identity. The chairman, who occasionally tours hotels nationwide, frequently visits this headquarters hotel. However, I rarely spoke with him at work. Though I was busy with work, we often had family meals on weekends, so there was no need to talk at the workplace. So, this mistake was John's fault, right? Looking at the records, it seems like it was finalized with one less person from the beginning rather than a cancellation. The chairman questioned the manager. It seemed the manager's habit of using me as a stress outlet had finally caught up with him. Unable to respond, the manager just stood there, pale-faced, as the chairman handed him a thick report. This is a report of your past problematic behaviors. My son, when he first joined the company, mentioned that you burdened him with menial tasks. Although things worked out with my daughter as president and her husband John as vice president, if it weren't for her, we would have struggled with a successor. As the chairman said, Jennifer's brother had left the company due to the manager's harassment. I had heard about it, but I was unaware that the culprit was the manager. I was entrusted with everything from planning the trip to making reservations. The final payment was left to the manager. Normally, just processing the payment wouldn't result in such an error. Additionally, when I checked with the airline, they said they received a request to reduce the number by 1, which was different from the initial estimate. Not only I, but also the employees present, turned sharp gazes toward the manager. It was understandable, as they had planned to start the trip early, but were now caught up in the chairman's reprimand. By the way, I had entrusted this to him this time. I'm busy, so I left the final payment to him. The manager tried to shift the blame onto a nearby employee. However, the manager had no allies left. The employees shook their head in denial. You never learn, do you? The chairman's angry voice made the manager tremble. This was how he had always pinned his mistakes on others. The chairman read aloud from the report, listing the manager's wrongdoings. Who would? Forcing menial tasks on others, giving no work, ignoring greetings. These were just a few of his misdeeds. The manager's eyes darted around, his mouth opening and closing silently. This report is based on interviews with people you harassed, including myself. They were reluctant to recall these painful memories, but when I said it would be documented, they cooperated immediately. Some even kept recordings, anticipating this day might come. I played a recording on the voice recorder. The familiar sound of the manager's insults played back. Then the chairman bowed deeply and apologized to all of us employees. I am truly sorry. It is also my responsibility for not creating an environment where employees can work comfortably. With the chairman bowing in apology, the manager had nothing more to say. Thus, this year, unfortunately, the president announced to all employees that transfers could not be refused without a valid reason. When someone stays in the same department for years, they get too comfortable or stuck in their ways. Job rotation exists to prevent this, and this incident reaffirmed that. The manager was demoted and transferred to a resort hotel in Hawaii. Hawaii resort hotels seem glamorous and fun, and they are. However, that's why staff skills and teamwork are crucial. Can the manager handle it? The chairman is probably testing him. Later, I became the general manager of the headquarters. My subordinates apologized for laughing along with the manager. It was likely self-preservation. My grandmother and father were worried about how worn out I looked, but they were delighted when I told them I became the general manager. Who would have thought John would end up working with Michael? And as a general manager, you've surpassed your father. Seeing their happy faces made me happy too. My grandmother intended to close her shop, but my father took over when I joined the hotel. Seeing me working hard, my father felt he couldn't be left behind. So, he quit his job, enrolled in a vocational school, and earned his qualifications. To my surprise, the chairman was a regular customer at the barber shop. Every time the chairman came for a haircut, my father would ask about my work performance and get updates on my progress. The support of these important people helped me overcome the sadness of losing my mother. From now on, I want to be the one to support these important people. That's enough! Go home, useless old man! The female boss yelled in an irritated tone. The ginkgo trees are the symbol of the town. The deforestation plan depends on tree assessment results. The female boss told me, a certified arborist. to give a favorable assessment for her benefit. But of course, I wouldn't comply with that. Rather, I believed I must bring the truth to light and oust those who think only of their gain. My name is Will. Today, I am attending a study session on park trees, organized by the NPO group as a member. I started this when I turned 50, making this my 7th year. Regularly, I tour old trees and involve myself in preservation and management efforts. The group's activities are purely voluntary, but I earned my arborist certification 2 years ago and have occasionally conducted professional assessments. My main job is in landscaping, so I can't frequently act as an arborist, but I plan to retire soon and focus more on community service. That day, after the NPO study session, we were chatting at a diner, and Mary mentioned something concerning. A volunteer from the flowerbed group saw a First Parts employee spreading something around the ginkgo trees. First Parts is a company in this town that sells auto parts, and they have a store facing the main road. Ginkgo trees are planted along this road as street trees, with flower beds also maintained. However, only the flower beds around First Parts are withering. I see, that might be a problem. So we decided to go check the site immediately. Sure enough, only the area in front of the store was yellowing and wilting. While observing, an employee from First Parts came out and started pouring liquid from a plastic bottle. Look, that must be weed killer. But he's pouring it at the edge of the parking lot, within the store's property. It's far from the flower beds. At that moment, the male employee pouring the liquid glanced our way. Even though we were several meters away, he seemed to click his tongue in annoyance. Did he just click his tongue because we're here? Should we ask him about it? What, Will? I walked into the parking lot and approached the male employee. I thought it would be faster to ask him directly than to speculate from a distance. The employee readily admitted to using weed killer and said he would get his supervisor, asking us to wait. Soon, a woman in a suit arrived. Oh, the flower beds, right? The woman, who introduced herself as Susan Brown, was the manager of First Parts. Weeds on our property are a nuisance. When it gets warm, they attract bugs, which is unpleasant. Is that so? Do you also spray weed killer around the flower beds? Susan paused for a moment and looked directly at me. Excuse me, but who might you be? Are you with the city? No, I'm a local. I volunteer in tree preservation, and I noticed only that flower bed is withering. Well, can you ask the city about it? As you said, the flower beds aren't our responsibility. She dismissed us and started to walk back to the store, but I raised my voice a bit. If you spray weed killer on public flower beds without permission, that's vandalism. Susan seemed to pause for a moment but continued walking as if she hadn't heard. After that, my friends and I went to talk to the city office. The reason that flower bed is wilting is likely because First Parts sprayed weed killer. The volunteers entrusted by the city work tirelessly to maintain those flower beds, which are a symbol of our town along with the ginkgo trees. Spraying weed killer without permission is unacceptable. We were shocked when we heard from Michael, the city official. That section of the flower bed is scheduled to be removed. What? Really? Why? Yes, we've received complaints from nearby residents about weeds and bugs, so the city plans to spray weed killer soon. I found this suspicious. All the other flower beds are well maintained, with no weed or bug issues. Are these complaints from First Parts by any chance? Well, I can't disclose that as it involves personal information. This seemed fishy. It felt like this official was siding with First Parts. As we continued to ask questions, something even more shocking was revealed. Actually, there's a plan to widen that road, which involves removing the ginkgo trees and the flower beds. What? When was this decided? Are you cutting down all the trees? Yes. Although it's not final yet, we're considering replanting some trees elsewhere. They were planning to cut down the beloved ginkgo trees. Has this been approved by the city council? If you're planning to remove all the trees, you need to explain this to the local residents. Well, we will consider holding an informational meeting. It seemed that they hadn't even informed the residents yet. This was getting more suspicious. We continued to question the official, but he dodged our inquiries, and we learned nothing about the reasons for or the process behind the felling plan. Later, the plan to remove the ginkgo trees and flower beds became known to the local residents, and opinions were divided. Some lamented the loss of the cherished trees and flower beds, while others supported the plan, citing issues with fallen leaves clogging drains and roots causing uneven sidewalks. Indeed, maintaining both accessibility and aesthetics requires proper management. Even healthy-looking trees can have decaying cores. In light of this felling plan, it was decided to investigate potential tree hazards, and our NPO group would conduct the assessments. We don't yet know the final outcome, but whether the trees stay or go, it's important to investigate thoroughly and decide together. In this regard, First Part's attitude is far from commendable. They continue to spray weed killer on the flower beds and refuse to participate in discussions. Amidst all this, one day, I received an invitation to the First Part's anniversary party. Although I run a landscaping business in the same town, I had never had any direct dealings with them. Curious, I attended the event and exchanged greetings. However, I couldn't stop thinking about the ginkgo trees and flower beds in front of the store. I left the party midway and went to check the flower beds. Upon closer inspection, it still seemed like weed killer or something similar had been used. If the city officials' explanation about the road widening plan were true, it would be odd to spray only this section. The complaints supposedly came from the neighbors, which was likely First Part's. It felt more like the city was covering up First Part's unauthorized use of weed killer. Why was the city so protective of this one company? While pondering this, I was approached from behind. "There you are. We invited you to enjoy the food, you know." It was Susan. From her tone, it seemed she was the one who invited me. "I didn't realize we were neighbors. Besides landscaping, you're also a certified arborist. How impressive, I'm truly in awe. I apologize for the other day. I didn't have my business cards with me when we met." Something felt off. The last time we met, she was condescending and unapproachable. Today, she seemed eager to win me over. "Since we're neighbors, let's get along well from now on. I'm delighted to know someone as wonderful as you, William. We could exchange information, don't you think?" Information exchange. I sensed this was leading to some negotiation. Touching the ginkgo tree in front of me, I said, "Yes, please. So, what do you think about the plan to cut down these ginkgo trees?" I didn't miss the brief smile that flickered across Manager Susan's face when I mentioned the felling plan. "After the ginkgo trees are cut down, they plan to plant cherry trees. The city is looking for a good landscaping contractor, and I'd love to recommend you, Will." "Is that so? Replacing all the trees will be quite an expensive project." "Indeed, there's talk of a non-competitive contract. If I put in a good word, it's almost guaranteed. Typically, city public works projects are determined by bidding. In other words, multiple contractors compete, and the one offering the lowest price is chosen. However, she mentioned a non-competitive contract, meaning the city would select a specific contractor without bidding. Why a non-competitive contract instead of bidding? Typically, non-competitive contracts are for specialized projects that only certain contractors can handle. Is there a specific reason for the non-competitive contract? Is it because I'm a certified arborist? Exactly, Will, you're very perceptive. There are some objections to the felling, so it's crucial to have a certified arborist's assessment to justify it. I see. There aren't many landscaping contractors with an arborist certification. It makes sense. So, if I assess that the trees need to be felled, I get the cherry tree replacement project. That's amazing. Exactly. Isn't it wonderful? Then I reverted to my serious tone. But based on the condition of the trees, there's no need for felling. Susan, who had been laughing loudly, suddenly stopped. How can you influence a city's non-competitive contract? And what's your connection with the city official regarding the flower beds? With a sour expression, Susan suddenly took out a cigarette and blew smoke in my face. "You're impossible. Enough. Get out of here, useless old man." In an irritated tone, she raised her voice. Just as I was taken aback by her sudden change, someone appeared. "You! How dare you call him useless?" It was the president of First Parts. He looked pale and seemed to be shaking with anger. "What? He's just a landscaper, right? Don't you know, He's a major landowner in this area, and our company rents land from him. What? After that, I received a profuse apology from the president of First Parts. Susan disappeared and hasn't been heard from since. Of course, through my NPO group, I submitted the tree assessment, stating, no need for felling. From my interaction with Susan, it was clear that there was some collusion between First Parts and someone in the city. I felt a strong sense of duty. As one of the long-standing landowners, I have to protect this area. I believed I must bring the truth to light and oust those who only think of their own gain. Given the recent events, the most suspicious person on the city's side is Michael, the official, along with members of my NPO group and acquaintances from the local shopping district and Chamber of Commerce. I repeatedly demanded the city to clarify the facts. Using the Freedom of Information Act, we divided the task of reviewing public records. One day we found definitive evidence. It was a record of a meeting between Susan from First Parts and Michael. The meeting took place the day after my first encounter with manager Susan. Moreover, the meeting's content was about operational issues and not weeds and insect complaints, as Michael had claimed. With this evidence in hand, I confronted Michael again. Michael, according to the records, you discussed operational issues with the manager of First Parts. As a result, the city decided to spray weed killer. Yes, that's correct. The operational issues were due to weeds and insects affecting the business. I then showed him the photos of the flower beds that I had prepared. A volunteer had individually recorded them. Look at the dates. The flower beds began withering before the meeting between First Parts and the city. This suggests that weed killer might have been sprayed before the city's decision. Did you confirm this? Well, we did. Michael visibly started to panic. When and how did you confirm this? Well, on the day of the meeting, we interviewed First Parts. So, you only confirmed this with the party under suspicion? Yes, that's correct. Michael looked down, admitting defeat. As I suspected from the start, the city official had been siding with First Parts all along. Here's likely what happened. On the day I first met Susan, I told her that spraying weed killer on the flower beds without permission could be considered vandalism. Fearing legal repercussions, she quickly went to the city and convinced the official. However, it's unlikely that she, a private company representative, could easily sway the city's stance. Michael holds a significant position, and it's hard to believe he simply accepted First Parts claims at face value. Additionally, Susan recently tried to entice me with the talk of cherry tree replacements. This suggests that this issue involves higher-level interests within the city. Susan's connections are not with Michael, but with someone higher up. When I shared my thoughts with the members helping with the investigation, one of them, Mary, said, "Will, this is getting pretty serious. I'm starting to get scared. What if we face retaliation for challenging higher-ups?" Mary, you've been watching too many TV dramas? It's the opposite. It's because people get scared that these individuals get more brazen. Exactly. There's no need to tiptoe around this. I decided to speak with the city council member leading this felling plan. That person is Thomas Tim, a veteran councilman who has been re-elected for many years. Of course, he isn't someone I can easily meet with, but I managed to get an opportunity by framing it as a petition from local residents. Councilman Tim, whom I met in the City Hall's meeting room, exuded a calm yet intimidating presence. However, when he spoke, he was friendly and approachable, making the petition discussion pleasant. But the atmosphere changed when I asked this question. Do you know Susan Brown, the manager at First Parts? Susan Brown? No, I don't know her. Is there a reason I should? His expression didn't change. However, his voice seemed to tighten slightly. Recently, she told me that if I assessed that the ginkgo trees needed to be cut down, she would ensure I got the non-competitive contract for the cherry tree replacements. I have a recording. I placed the voice recorder on the table. The room fell silent, and I could hear the other participants gasp. That's unusual. Normally, it would be a bid process.